In place, many residents and stakeholders are setting an agenda for Babajide Sanwo-Olu's administration in the areas of housing, waste management, transportation, amongst others.
All right, joining me now to talk about this is co-founder Rethinking Cities Initiative, Deji Akinpelu. Deji, good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to have you join me, really.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
We have a new dawn in Nigeria, a new dawn in Lagos, a
Yeah.
new dawn in many parts of the country, in states. All right, now let's talk about the issue of if you come to Lagos, and especially in the older Lagos areas like Yaba, areas like Victoria Island, Marina, and all of that, you see the landscape. It's the urban planning is so beautiful. It looks like anywhere in London or anywhere in all of those. But when you leave there and then come to other places, so even within Ikeja, it's a totally different thing. When it comes to planning of the city and urban renewal, what do you think really Lagos should be like?
Oh, well, that's a very good one that you've asked about. So we have a strong case of gentrification that is going on in Lagos. The city is kind of developing, it's changing, but there's a high concentration of, you have newer structures coming into the city. And similarly, it has its disadvantage and its challenges. The city is becoming less inclusive in its planning, whereby original owners of these places, like you say, Yaba is going through a whole lot of gentrification right now. You have developers coming into the system, putting in place new structures. But however, we need to start looking at how we can plan the city in such a way that it is inclusive. It is not really a city for the poor. You know, you have an areas exclusive.
A dichotomy for poor people, or I wouldn't like to use the word poor people anyway. Nobody.
There's a
but for middle class or maybe something.
There are some people lower than middle class. So, for instance, there are some guys who are taking initiative, going into areas like Agege, all these areas that you have very poorly constructed buildings, and they're working with the landowners to do what? To rebuild their houses. So,
but how challenging would that be? Because people, the place is choked already, and then because when you come to tell someone, we need to bring down your house, or we need to restructure your house so that it can fit into a new outlook that we want, that's going to take a lot of you know, planning, or take a lot of even money.
No, it doesn't have to take a lot of money. With the necessary government policy and support. That doesn't need to happen. So the challenge is, okay, you need to pull out this structure. You have to pay the government. But here, guys who are just going into somewhere like that and trying to do some regeneration, okay, you work with them. The government works with them to make that happen on a very cheap, because you know that it's a special project. So this is Agege. So simply also the case of Lagos Island, collapsed buildings and all of that. How can we make it a special area that developers can move into the place, and we give them concessions, we give them the chance to move into the community.
But do you think there should be a kind of a policy where if you're coming up with a structure, it should align with a certain template?
Definitely.
Because it's same, everyone is building his own house just the way he wanted.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we have to look at what is happening in that sector and look at the players. How can we go into the system and help particularly the informal setup of workers that we have, training the people in informality sector who build and all of that. So it's a strong issue of when you talk about also the issue of slum areas in Lagos. You know, we have Lasura, the urban regeneration group, special ministry. Like in our own civil society, we have proposed to the new government that Lasura should be upgraded to the level of a ministry and reports directly to the governor's office. The last administration had issued an instruction that over 16 slums will be wiped out. But there can be an in-suit planning building towards all these slum areas, working with the people. During the election, the new governor, congratulations to him, had promised that, for instance, a place like Badia, that instead of the people being forcefully evicted, they're going to be given land title to build their house, and, you know, things like that. You know, that kind of plan. Instead of us saying, okay, we want to make Lagos the next Dubai, let us make Lagos the next Lagos that is authentic, that meets the need of the people.
All right, I'll take that one away. Let's make Lagos the new Lagos, not making it a Dubai. Thank you very much for coming, Deji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, is moving towards being a smart city.
Now, with the new administration in place, many residents and stakeholders are setting an agenda for the Babajide Sanwo-Olu administration in the areas of housing, waste management, transportation, among others.
Joining me to talk about this is co-founder Rethinking Cities Initiative, Deji Akinpelu. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, looking at housing, Lagos State have come up with several housing schemes, yet it seems that that isn't enough, or it's not achieving its sole purpose. So how can we have an inclusive city when it comes to Lagos, that's, when it comes to housing, everybody is carried along? Yeah,
like you rightly said, the schemes haven't been able to solve the problem. The housing deficit, depending on who is giving the statistics, you'll be talking about 3 million, 4 million, 5 million housing deficit in the city like Lagos. It's pretty much difficult for government to meet up with that number of people, to meet up with the deficit that we have in the sector. So definitely we have to start looking for alternatives, alternative planning. So it's supposed to be a deliberate attempt to provide affordable housing. Now,
of course, but then the government has a role to play, despite the fact that it is difficult for it to achieve that.
The role the government has to play is to create the enabling environment where you ask developers and like, okay, who is interested in doing going for affordable housing or social housing? Okay, hey, we want to do that. Then what do? Then you set out policies. You look at for tax reliefs and all of tax relief, different modalities that government can put in place. Government has no business really doing business. It is to create the enabling environment, a deliberate effort to say, okay, hey, if you want to build for affordable housing, these are the terms and conditions that we are giving to you. We are easing this off for you. We are helping you out by doing this. So also what we need is also a mixed development plan. So not building areas exclusively for the rich or for the poor. So but you create an housing plan that, okay, hey, in this area, okay, you have this percentage of people, you have this housing rate that goes for this cadre of people, and you have this rate going for this.
But there are issues when it comes to working with developers, because we've had issues of collapsed building and all of those things. What would be how can we resolve all of this when it comes to working with developers such that there is a standard that is met?
Yeah, there's a standard.
Because you also have to consider the issue of the weather when it comes to, because Lagos is waterlogged, so to speak. Yeah,
Lagos is waterlogged, and that's an interesting perspective also to the issue of housing and the issue of wetlands in Lagos. So you have rapid development going on even on wetlands. So in Lagos, we need a deliberate approach to the management of wetlands and protection of wetlands in Lagos. So what you have presently, you have developers going into even wetland areas that development shouldn't happen. So to protect the environment, that's why you have a situation in Lagos whereby when it rains heavily now, everywhere is flooded because you have buildings all over the place where they shouldn't belong. So all those regulations or all that we also need to play, because we also have to become climate resistant in a city like Lagos. So it's not like, okay, there's an heavy downpour and we must have flooding. But going back directly to what you were trying to say in terms of developers getting interested in doing, we have to see housing as a social good, not as an economic good. So the thinking in the sector and the way we are approaching housing is that it is an economic good. It is
so that thinking has to change.
That thinking has to change. It has to come from the perspective of that there is a responsibility by the government to create that enabling environment, to create affordable housing for the people, a deliberate one. There is the question of what is affordable. What is affordable to me is not what is affordable to you. But definitely. You are saying that consider...
We have to leave it at this point. I know you want to go on and on, Deji Akinpelu. Thank you for your time on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you for inviting.
Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, is moving towards being a smart city.
With a new administration in place, many residents and stakeholders are setting an agenda for Babajide Sanwo-Olu's administration in the areas of housing, waste management, transportation, amongst others.
All right, joining me now to talk about this is co-founder, Rethinking Cities Initiative, Deji Akinpelu. Deji, it's good to have you join me right now.
Thank you for
If you look
having
at the housing pattern in Lagos,
Yeah.
how concerned are you, especially in some places where you have so much choked houses together where you don't have ventilation and all of that?
That is an interesting development and that needs to be addressed immediately. We need to rework and replan our city. Lagos is a fast-growing city. You have people coming in every day, and that is increasing.
But there people seem to be converging in certain places like Ikeja and Victoria Island. We have Ikorodu is there, even down to Imota, the areas of Badagry is that you have vast land where no one is occupying.
That's true. Yeah. So you have a situation whereby people migrate into a city like Lagos and they don't have money, they don't have resources within them. So you even find them a whole lot of people migrating into the slum areas, the Makoko and all of that. You even have people migrating
where they can have cheap services.
Where you can have cheap housing. Okay. And some of this housing development, very unfavorable housing the living condition in those places happens to not be too good. And you've had situations whereby the government had to take steps in times past to say, okay, hey, we have to evict people from this locality. It doesn't work. But historically, these people too will tell you that the original indigenes of those places that, okay, this land actually belongs to us. We've been habitants for the past 40, 50 years.
Sometimes even 100 years.
Even
given to them from their parents and grandparents.
So the question is, how do we regenerate these places? How can we plan for these places? How can we plan alongside with
That's a good question. If you travel to Johannesburg or maybe even London or New York, for instance, or even Nairobi, you travel, you're very quick to want to take a selfie, because the environment, the housing pattern, everything is so outlined and lined out there. If you come to Lagos, it's a different thing altogether. How challenging would it be to reorganize that housing pattern where it's not very...
All the places that you have mentioned happen to all be mega cities like Lagos. So urbanization is a problem in those places, and informal housing settlements that you have there. So what governments all over the world have tried to do is go for urban regeneration. This present administration had promised during the election that a place like Badia, for instance, that the people will be given land title and a regeneration plan will be executed, So a pilot scheme. So it's pretty much riding on a social housing concept, whereby we begin to see housing not just as an economic good, but as a social good and as a responsibility by the government to make housing affordable for people, regenerating this city, so de-emphasizing a situation whereby people are displaced forcefully and all of that.
There are people building houses every day, and you just walk, you get an architect for yourself, you get, whoever wants to build the place for you, you get a contractor for yourself, and then you just start building. Now, what would it take for people to buy into this so that there can be uniformity of, okay, this is the kind of pattern we want these houses around here to go, and so on?
Yeah, it's all about enforcement and setting the rules. Right. But however, in creating enforcement and setting rules, we have to consider everybody. So you don't set enforcement and rules that makes it very stringent and looks like anti-people or like anti-informal sector. Whether you like it or not, you have bricklayers that are not well educated and all of that. But all you just need to do in that kind of situation is to help the informal sector. You are building skill, you are building manpower. So in that area, helping people themselves, so Lagos is highly an informal city. You have over 70% of the population who are into informal trade and all of that. So when you're thinking housing and you're trying to provide housing, you have to think from that perspective. Yeah. If not, you'll be providing housing solutions for a very few rich people. We've had housing go for 22 million in a city like Lagos. yeah, the majority of the people can't afford that. So it's going for an housing plans, financial instruments, such as social housing that people can access, working with cooperative and thrift societies.
All right,
to
so
build
that
their
there
own
can
housing.
be a total inclusion. Thank you
Yeah,
very
total
much,
inclusion.
DJ Akinpelu, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right.